Just because you've been through a lot doesn't mean you've grown from it. Some people have years of experience, but zero maturity. And this is why their life never actually changes. The real problem isn't what you've been through, it's what you did or didn't do with it. What's going on, my curious and intellectual people? Welcome back to Intrigue and Insights, where deep conversations meet everyday life, looking beyond the obvious to uncovering meaning, challenge assumption, and find wisdom in places most people overlook. Almost everyone says that experience is the best teacher. But what if that's only half the truth? Because if experience alone led to growth, then everyone would be wiser, kinder, and more self aware with age. And yet, we all know people who repeat the same mistakes carry the same habits and never really change. So, what's missing? Today, we're diving into a powerful idea. Experience doesn't equal growth, and why some people never mature. Experience is what happens to you, but maturity is what you do with what happens. Because experience equals exposure. Things happen: success, rejection, heartbreak, failure, opportunity. These events don't automatically teach anything, they're neutral until interpreted. Two people can go through the same events, the same breakup, job loss, or criticisms, and walk away completely different. Now, maturity equals response plus reflection. Maturity is the active part. Now, do you reflect or just react? Do you take responsibility or blame others? Do you extract a lesson or repeat a pattern? You see, maturity is intentional, but experience is passive. Experience is automatic. It would happen without effort or intention. You don't have to try, think, or grow for it to occur. It will happen with or without you. Life will keep moving whether you're learning or not. It's time based. It gives you more experience, but it doesn't guarantee that you learn from it all. Experience comes simply from you existing over time. The longer you live, the more you accumulate. But time alone doesn't equal wisdom. You can be 40, 50, or 60 and still handle conflict the same way you did when you were 20. Time passed, but you didn't progress. Because time doesn't mature you, decisions do. You've dated 5, 6, 7 people, but still choose the same type. That's not growth, that's repetition. Experience without maturity leads to repeated patterns, not connections. In your relationships, if you're just experiencing and not maturing, you will keep choosing the same type of partner. You will have the same arguments. You will react instead of communication. You don't build healthier relationships. You just get more experience with unhealthy ones. Some people don't have relationship growth, they have relationship history. Now, In careers, experience alone can make you comfortable, but not competent. 10 years at the job and you're still undisciplined, still late, and still average. You rely on what you already know. You resist feedback and new approaches. And you basically plateau while you think you're progressing. Somehow, you've confused years worked with skills developed. And this is how you can spend 10 years in a career or repeat the same year for 10 years. Now, when we're talking about faith, you can have years in the church and still be emotionally unstable, still reactive, and still immature. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up a little verse to share what the Bible specifically says about church people, to be precise, in this area. We don't know exactly who is the writer, but because of the type of writing, we're assuming that it is Paul. The way he expresses himself and the things that he says here identifies with his typically communication. So this is how we interpret that this is a possibility of Paul speaking here. We can't say it's absolute truth because, like his other books, he addresses and state with greetings his name, the Apostle Paul. But here it's not. But we just assume that, just an assumption. But anyways, back to the point. Sorry. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 11 through 14. 11. We have a great deal to say about this, and it is difficult to explain since you have become too lazy to understand. I'm going to stop for a second. When we read verse 11, we see that we have a great deal to talk about this. It's actually referring to something that he stated, but I'm not going to go too far into it, kind of try to stick with the context of this podcast and what I'm saying about the faith and lack of experience and maturity, or understanding the distinction between experience and maturity. So just to say, I'm not trying to snatch this out of context of the Bible, because we could definitely go back and read and do it, but not trying to give a whole lesson on this, but just use this as an understanding. So start over again, kind of sidebar there. We have a great deal to say about this, something else different, and it is difficult to explain since you have become too lazy to understand. Although by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you the basic principles of God's revelation again. You need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is inexperienced with the message about righteousness because he is an infant. But solid food is for the mature, for those whose senses have been trained to distinguish between good and evil. So the topic that he's discussing with them, he's saying we can't talk to you about it because they won't be able to comprehend, because they never exercise their faith in a way to be able to understand it in a mature fashion, because they're still drinking milk, meaning they're still going off the basic principles of the Bible and understanding the teaching. That means they never grew off of what salvation is, repentance, and such. He states that in other passages. I'm just giving you the context of what he's saying without reading the context. But it's in Hebrews 5. You can go and read it yourself and understand. But basically what he's saying there is that the principles, the basic principles in verse 12, He says that you should be a teacher, but you need someone to teach you. Why? Because they never learn from the things that God has revealed to them in the beginning of their Christian walk and their faith. For him to be able to hold a conversation, to dialogue with them, for them to be able to grasp what it's saying. In faith, you have years in the church, but you're still emotionally unstable. You're still reactive and you're still immature. That's basically what he's saying. Why? Because your senses have not been trained to distinguish between good and evil. They didn't use them. So that's just a little something to share with. This is what happens when we are not appropriately and diligently and putting forth effort, intention in faith to grow and mature, so that way we can have real maturity rather than history of experience. So that's why I want to bring this up, because according to what the writer of Hebrews in chapter 5 from verses 11 to 14, he says, it states, experience without maturity can turn faith into routine instead of transformation. You go through the motions without internal change. Go to church, when they open the doors, you're there year after year, but still nothing changes internally because you're not applying the things that you're getting. When we go to churches, it's basically like a soldier goes to the army and he practices all year round for the war, if he ever gets the war. It's like the basketball, the football, the tennis player, when they go to practice for the actual game. The game is when you show up. That's the time where it lets you know what your practice was like. And if you literally was putting forth the effort to achieve and succeed and excel to greatness, it's the same when you're going to church. Are you going there getting information that would train you in order for you to come out and battle the other 6 days of the week when you're doing your everyday life, to illustrate the things that God is teaching you when you go to church on Sunday? If not, then you're just experiencing church. You're not maturing at all. Just saying, food for thought. You know the language, but you don't live the principles. That means you say all the Christian words, quote all the scriptures, have all the phrases, all the quotes, but it leads to hypocrisy. Why? Because you just don't do it at all. And here you avoid the deep examination. This is an example with Adam and Eve at the beginning, which is a argumentative thing, saying that is God all-knowing, and he is, but he questioned Adam. He said, where are you? I mean, he was walking through the garden straight to him, if you read the text in Genesis, what he talks about it. And when he gets to them, he asks them questions. Why? Because he's trying to prick self-examination to bring out of them to recognize, hey, where you at? Do you know where you at? I know where you at. I came to you. But do you know where you at? And with that self-examination, it kind of gets them to the place of where they need to go. But we avoid self-examination when it comes to our faith, which is why that growth cannot be developed. And basically, this is how you become externally committed, but internally unchanged. Because spiritual activity is not the same as spiritual growth. So, whether if it's relationships, career, or faith, if experience alone change people, then everyone will be wise. With no reflection, people are just experiencing life, but they're not processing it. No self-examination, no What did I learn? Or no connecting patterns. This results in the same lessons, just a different situation. But if you don't reflect life, it doesn't teach you. You just collect moments. Growth requires honesty, and honesty can hurt. You must admit that you're wrong, face your insecurities, and let go of your ego. But instead, people distract themselves, minimize issues, and stay where it's familiar. And this ends in the result of comfort replacing growth. Truly, people don't avoid growth. They avoid discomfort that comes with it. We want change. We crave it all the time. But the minute that it becomes discomforting, we revert. Go back to what's familiar. Another thing we do is we push the blame on someone else. Instead of ownership, they assign the fault outward. What you hear is, it's not me, it's them. That's just how things is. I'm just unlucky. But in reality, no responsibility equals no change. You can't change what you refuse to take responsibility for. So, what we see is that you don't grow from experience alone. You grow from evaluated experience. But what does maturity actually look like? You respond instead of reacting. A reaction is immediate and emotional, but a response is delayed and intentional. For example, if someone disrespects you, your natural instinct is to snap back. But maturity equals creating a space in between stimulants and action. You pause, process, then choose what aligns with who you are becoming. Immaturity speaks fast, but maturity, it listens to itself first. The second thing that we see maturity actually looking like is take accountability quickly. Mature people do not waste time defending what they know they need to fix. For example, you mess up. No long explanation. No blame shifting. You own it cleanly and quickly. The speed of accountability equals the speed of your growth. The longer you defend it, the longer you delay fixing it. Another way of knowing you're actually maturing is recognizing patterns and breaking them. Maturity is pattern awareness plus interruption. So, same toxic relationships, same emotional triggers, anger, shutdown, and avoidance, self-sabotaging cycle. Instead of asking, why does this keep happening to me? Ask yourself, what am I repeating? Because you don't break cycles by accident. You break them by an awareness. So, my last and final way to know how we actually are maturing, you choose long term over short term. Maturity is delayed gratification in action. Maturity is delayed gratification in action. It's a daily choice to be disciplined over comfortable. So choose. growth over validation, and choose consistency over mood. You ask yourself, will this decision help or hurt me a year from now? Maturity is choosing the life you want later over the feeling you want right now. Because maturity is when your behavior matches what you say you believe. The Bible never says that trials automatically produces maturity. It says that trials produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character. But the only way that happens is if you process it the right way. Because God will allow the experience, but he will not force the maturity. So the question isn't, what have I been through? The real question is, who did you become because of it? Because if you do not grow what you go through, you'll keep going through the same thing. If this podcast has helped you understand the distinction between experience and maturity and gave you some helpful tools that enlighten you and understand that this whole time the reason why you became stuck and you're not growing and expanding because you thought that the experience, the time that you spent going through this process should have matured you, and now understanding that your maturity level is in the power of your hands and you have control of it, click that subscribe button. Follow me and share with anyone else that you think that this might help them to understand that true maturity depends on you. How you effectively evaluate what you went through to learn from it, to break those patterns, and to grow, to make sure you don't repeat them, over the fact that experience is supposed to just automatically give it to you. Remember, clarity doesn't come from easy answers, but from the courage to ask the hard ones. So stay curious, stay open, and keep looking deeper. Peace.